Hello, this is KiwaniTalk. My name's Ray Scaboria. I'll be your host for this evening's program. KiwaniTalk is a public information program brought to you from the facilities of WDHS at Dearborn High School by members of the Dearborn Kiwanis Club and students that help us with the recording the shows. Today, I'm very pleased to have a friend of mine, and we met at a local restaurant, actually, yes. the Holiday Restaurant. And we often see each other there and have pleasant chats. My guest is Richard Papp, and Richard has been involved at the Downriver Model Car Club for some time. He tells me he has in the area of 50 models that he's produced over the years. And we have a couple of them here. And but we thought we'd just give you a little of Richard's background. Richard, why don't you just give us a little spiel on school and work and things like that?
Well, I'm a lifelong Dearborn resident, and I went to St. Barbara School. Then I attended Woodworth, Fortson, and then Henry Ford Community College. And while I was at the college, I decided I would work as a custodian to pay for my 2-year degree, and then I would go and see what I could do. I didn't know that would turn into a 41-year career with the Dearborn schools. So, and I retired now, what, 8.5, almost 9 years.
Well, as you know, I had rental properties for a long time, so we had, although my tasks were on a smaller scale, we had a little bit in common in sizing up issues with around a building that needed to be corrected.
Yeah, I started, like I say, as a custodian part-time, and then I moved into the grounds, and I worked that for 12 years. Then I got into the trades, and eventually I became leader, so I was running carpenters, locksmiths, metal shop, as well as welders, and then over the years, also painters and glazers and masons. So we were responsible for all these buildings, 35. In fact, we did some work in this studio. So
I'm reading a book that I got for Christmas, and it's about older buildings in Dearborn, and there's one whole section on schools. And how many schools there's been in Dearborn? What's the currently Dearborn? That have been built in the past and used for many years, and eventually many of them got past their use, and a lot of them are gone now. But schools are a lot of work to maintain.
Well, yeah, we had over 30 buildings where we had constant responsibility. It didn't matter what time of day either. I mean, my job was to get the crews there, get the materials there. I could be at a family function, I could be on vacation, whatever. If something happened, they'd call you up and you had to go. You had to be ready.
And some of the schools were built 20 years ago, and some were built 70 years ago.
Yeah. Now, Fortson just turned 100.
Did it really?
Yeah, we did a lot of work at Fortson. We did anything from simple tasks like hanging tack strips in a room, putting up chalkboards. We did several wings of this building where we actually made the cabinets and took out all the old cabinets and put in the new ones that we made. So it was a good job and I had a great boss. He'd come up to me in my office and say, "What are we doing today?" And I said, "I thought that was your job." He goes, "I got other things to do." He says, "You run the day-to-day." So it was a very good relationship there. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, now, this is something that in talking to you, you mentioned how many models you have at home, around home. So you've been doing this for a while too. Maybe even before you retired.
Yeah. Well, I started when I was young. My dad had a hobby shop, so I had access to some models, and I built models from maybe the time I was 10 till I was 18. And then, like I say, life comes around and a lot more responsibilities, and I just never built again for about 43 years.
Oh, okay.
So when I was retiring, getting ready to retire, my son at the time was swimming for Wayne State University, and he was out swimming against Grand Valley. And on the way home, they had a show at Baker's. It's out in Milford. And it was off in 96, and I'm coming right down 96. So I told my wife, I think I'll stop and see what that's all about. And it was a model car show and swap meet. And I walked in there, walked up to one of the vendors' tables and struck up a conversation with him. And I said, I feel like I'm getting back into my second childhood. I want to build models again. And he says, look around the room. Some of us never left our first one.
Yeah.
So, like I say, that was the start of it. And I never expected it to turn into anything that it did. I thought it would just be something small, you know, and it got quite involved.
Now, you mentioned that the group meets every month. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Meets at the Michael Adre Ice Arena.
At the ice arena?
They call it the Disc on Ford Road, just east of Greenfield. It's on the north side. We meet every third Friday of the month. And
now, does the ice arena have, it seems like that would be in a smaller area. Is there like a smaller room?
There's a room upstairs on the second floor that's between the two arenas.
Okay.
So actually, when we're in there, we can see them either practicing or
I
playing.
see. But you meet in a smaller room upstairs.
Yeah, it's quite large. It's a big room.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well, I just meant
yeah.
You would meet out.
I
in the
was
middle of the
surprised
arena.
when I walked in there. I thought it was going to be some little tiny room, and it's a good-sized room. And they do have an elevator there, so if we do have handicapped guys, we have a couple guys that were injured in auto accidents, and they get up through the elevator, so that's not a problem.
Now, at a regular meeting, do people bring models to regular meetings if they feel like it?
Yeah, it's encouraged that you bring models.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they also bring models that they might want to sell. So it's a mini swap meet. You show your models, and then we've been having a theme night. So first of the year, they put out what each month is going to be. And like this month, it's 60s drag cars. The next month, it might be something like customs. Then it might be white walls. They'll just pick a topic, and anybody that has anything like that, they're welcome to bring it and put it on the table. And it's amazing what you see. When you have a common theme, how many variations can be on that one theme.
And you had mentioned earlier, we had talked earlier, you said there might be 20 people there might be 30, and there might be a slow month, there might be a few less.
Right.
So there's quite a few people, there's quite a variety of models that come to the regular meeting.
Yeah, when you go to a show or a contest, they have, I would say upward of a dozen different categories that you could build.
I see.
And depending on what you bring, you enter it in that particular category, and then it's judged, and they'll give out plaques or ribbons.
Now, let's talk about shows a little bit. It sounds like there's a number of different shows at different levels, probably.
Yes. Autorama's coming up, and our club, in association with the DAM Club, and that's DAAM, they sponsor the show. And anybody's welcome to bring a model. There's no entry fee to put your model on the table. And they also give you a pass so you can come and pick it up on Sunday, and then they judge it and they award different awards for the different categories. And there's also two big shows, one coming up in March and the other one is in November. And those are at Macomb Community College. Okay. And they're on a Sunday. And they always publish when the dates aren't set that far in advance, but there's one coming up. Again, that's another swap meet and model car show, and that's a huge swap meet there.
So cars can be swapped or sold?
Guys will bring kits. You'll find some very old kits. You'll find current kits. They also will bring grab bags. They might have a bag and it says $10 for everything in the bag.
I see, yeah.
And I have a friend that loves those because he takes them home and he parts them out. And then that's how you get all the parts you need if you're into custom cars like I am.
Well, we'll get into the specific models, and you can describe how you create some of these things from not just from one kit, but from
multiple.
A starting point that doesn't look like much, and then turn it into a very interesting model.
Yes.
Now, we have a couple of the kits in front here, and I thought maybe maybe you could pick one and kind of start at scratch and kind of describe how it evolved.
Okay.
And how it developed.
The one I'll start with is the gypsy wagon. And on my dad's side, we're Hungarian. So when I saw the gypsy wagon, I said, I have to have one of those. You know, when I was a kid, I remember listening to the gypsy violin music at night on weekends and stuff. So they had issued this originally, but then it was out of production. Well, they reissued it. And when they reissued it, I bought one. So I like to do a lot of detailing work. This one is a diorama. It's the only diorama I have ever made. But what happened with this one was that when I first took it out of the box, being that I was, like I say, running maintenance and carpenters and all that, I looked at the roof and it was made incorrectly. The shingles were running the wrong way. So I decided I made those shingles out of wood veneers. It's a walnut wood veneer. And then I did some very high detailing
let me ask you,
on it.
one at a time?
One at a time.
One at a time. So
Yes.
every shingle you see on there was individually handcrafted.
Yes. And then you do different weathering techniques. And before the show started, we were talking about, you said that looked like brass. It's plastic. My intention was to make it look like it was made out of brass tubing. But the interesting story about this is the man on the box art here is supposed to be the man that designed this kit. His name's John Bogosian. And I was wondering if the guy was still alive. So I wanted to make a gypsy figure, and then one of the other kits that I have called the Paddy Wagon, they had a Keystone Cop. Well, he was originally a Keystone Cop that drove that vehicle, and I transformed him into a gypsy man. So a year ago in November, we were at the meeting, not the meeting, the show, and there was another one on the table, and the guy was standing there, and he said, I would take it for granted that's yours. And I said, yes, it is. And he's looking at it. He said, well, that one's mine. We start talking a little bit, and he looked at mine, and he looks at me, and he goes, I'm jealous of yours. And how do you answer a guy that says, I'm jealous of your model? I'm starting to try to make some kind of a response to the guy, and he turns to me, and he offers me his hand, and he says, and by the way, I'm John Bogosian. I designed the kit. So that kind of gave me chills. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, the guy that designed it is jealous of mine. But he said, how did you make the gypsy man? And I told him. And then a little funny thing is there are chickens from another kit. And being Hungarian, like I say, one of our best dishes is chicken paprikash. So they gave you the cauldron. They gave you a violin and a bow. And in the original kit, he's holding a gear shift and the steering wheel, while I put the bow in the one hand and the violin in the other. So that got a lot of attention. That was a very well-liked kit.
That's really interesting. But what gets me is making the shingles one at a time. I mean, that's not a hurry-up process.
No, it's tedious at best. And then you have to weather it, then you have to paint it.
But then model building that's one of the features of model building.
Yes.
It's very relaxing because you're not thinking about other things while you're building the model. You're taking
Well, my
your
one
time.
buddy says I don't have to pay a therapist. I just build a model. So.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, they get to you so much, you might need a therapist.
Now the gentleman, this Bogosian,
yes.
Am I saying his name right? It sounds like he probably designed other models. I'm just guessing.
Yes.
That was.
I have several of his models at home, and these were called show rods. They were never meant to be realistic. I mean, come on, you got this long extended frame with this huge Hemi engine in it and this little rickety shack on it. If it was real, it would either tip over or just fall to pieces on startup, you know. So it was just meant to draw in crowds.
Yeah.
And they nicknamed them show rods because, you know, some of them didn't even have components in the engine. They just pushed them out onto the stage.
Yeah. Okay, well, now let's see. Shows, when you can take various models to different shows.
Yes.
Is that right?
Whatever your niche in the hobby is.
Now, just for example, how many shows would you typically attend a year? You know?
Well, they used to have the one down in, they got them all over, but I usually attended the 2 Macomb shows and the Autorama, and there was one down in Toledo. They were within.
So 3 or 4 a year, depending on.
But there's a big one out in Jersey. There's a huge one out in Salt Lake City, which is the granddaddy. And there's one down in Georgia, and there are some very fine builders out there.
Yeah. Now, Rick, we have we take a little break in the center here, in the middle of our show, and we talk a little bit about Kiwanis, and so after the break, we'll have a little more description about the other 2 models on the table, and anything. Now, your group is always interested in people that want to do this sort of thing. So other people can come to a meeting if they wanted to see what things were like.
Anybody can walk in and look around, and if you decide, it's only $25 a year. And it was $20 up until last year, but everything went up a little bit. So we had to up it for $5, but you get a Christmas party out of that. And like I say,
it sounds like fun. We're going to take the break now. Join us again right after here with Richard Papp, and we'll talk a little more about these models.
Who is a kid? Well, that's a kid. And another. Look, a gaggle of them. Or is it a herd? Litter? Pride. But what about her? Tell her she's not a kid. Or him. So how do we tell who is a kid? Height? Age, maybe. But some of us have to grow up faster than others. A kid. A kid. A kid wants to make the world better. And one day, he just might. Is a kid fearless? Vulnerable? Strong? Nervous? Yes. 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 Kiwanis is 600,000 kids at heart doing all the little and big things it takes to help children around the world. Because kids need Kiwanis. All of them.
Hello, I'm Ray Scaboria, and I'm here with Richard Papp, and we're talking about the model club that he's a member of, the Downriver Model Car Club.
Yeah,
Downriver Model Car Club that meets monthly over at
Ice Arena.
Adre Ice Arena. Yes. So we were talking about this little diorama and this project before the break. And I guess we're going to go over and talk about Rat Fink a little bit.
Okay, Rat Fink was designed by a man named Ed Roth, Big Daddy Roth they called him. He was originally, I believe, a beatnik type guy, and he designed the Beatnik Bandit and the Beatnik Bandit 2 and the Mysterian and all different kind of cars, but he had drawn up a caricature and he called him Rat Fink. And I always, as a kid, loved Rat Fink, so found that they made a model. And what I did with this model was, it comes somewhat detailed, but I like to really add more detail to the models. So with a wire brush, I just started scrubbing at the ears and the shoulders and the arms to make it look like there's hair on the body. I really, I guess you could say, made the toenails, the fingernails show up. And then I even, if you look at the back of it, you'll notice he has palm prints, and I was able to describe those in with the back of an X-Acto blade. Then you just take, this is all hand painted, this particular model. The only thing I did was I sprayed this and I sprayed the primer, but after that everything else on there is hand painted, and I use different techniques. They call it dry brush, and you blend and you mix, and It's just something that I carried over. I had a lot of art background in high school.
And didn't you tell me that another thing you added, a little feature you added that wasn't on the model, was the warts weren't there?
The warts weren't there. And on the drawing, he's got warts all over the place. So I took a little piece of paper towel, rolled them up, wet them, put them on, and then started going over them with a mixture of white glue and water, and tried to give it more the look of the kit itself.
That you would, I mean, looking at it, it looks like it's part of the molded model.
You want it to look like it's been there.
It does look that way.
You don't want it to look like...
I imagine each wart took a little bit of time.
Yes. Sometimes they'd unroll on you, but eventually we got it. You know, it was just tedious. And that's what I like about the model hobby, is that the tedium.
Before we go too far, I'd like to talk about the car.
Okay. That's an Imperial. And when I found that at a meeting, the guy wanted $5. All it was a body. It had never been painted, and it must have been some young kid.
Yellow,
60
you told
years
me
ago.
it was.
Yeah, the plastic was all yellowed with age. It had this fin on it, and that's all it had. And that's what started the whole thing. So I thought, okay, I sanded it very cleanly and got rid of all the glue gobs. And then I started, we call it kit bashing. So you start looking for parts from other kits. So like the bar, the skirts, the grill, all the interior. There must be 8 different cars in the build of that particular vehicle. And the front of the vehicle, if you look at it, everybody thinks I used an Etzel horseshoe. And I did not use that. I took a T-Bird, custom T-Bird grill, cut it down, pieced it back together, and then put a grid in there. And the bumper that you see is actually the bumper, the Imperial bumper turned upside down.
Okay. So
then you do, I always say putty is my buddy, because there's a lot of putty in that. And it's got a Studebaker hood, all kind of stuff. I use the asymmetrical window. And when I put it in the contest, I thought, well, you know, people are either going to love it or they're going to pan it, one or the other. So a guy came over, and he was one of the exhibitors, and he's looking at it, and he gave it his award. And I was surprised, I was shocked at that. It also won a first place award at that contest. So then the one judge came up to me, he says, that's got to go down to Toledo because we want to see that there. The theme is going to be fins like jet age cars, jet age styling that they did all the customs in the 50s and 60s. So I put it on the table there, and I ended up taking best in theme.
Oh, that's great.
And,
that's good.
They got a lot more play than I ever thought it would get. You know, it was so crazy. Like I say, you're either going to say, wow, look at that, or whew, what in the world's wrong with that guy?
Well, I'm here pretty close to it, and I've been looking at it, and it amazes me the paint job, because that's paint you put on it.
Yeah,
and I don't know if you polish the paint. I don't know what you do,
yeah.
But I mean, the paint job appears to be flawless to me.
They call it rattle can, so it's just the regular testers. Now they have a product called Tamiya, and it's a high grade of model car paint. So you put that on, and then you put clear over it, and several coats of clear, and then you hand rub it, and you start getting the sheen. But it's always a challenge to not get the little dust bunnies and stuff in it, no matter what you do. Now, some guys are fabulous painters. If you look at this and you like it, you should see some of these guys that do the lowriders. I can't even imagine what they do to get that, but they work airbrush.
Yeah.
That's...
Well, I showed you a little model I did, and I didn't waste any time on the painting. I was done. You know?
Yeah.
And but at least my son, who gave it to me, he can see I did it.
Yes.
You know?
And there's all different levels of abilities in our club. You know, some guys, they just do very plain box stock, and that's fine. That's what they like to do. And you I love to look at everything. I don't judge. I just accept everything, and I figure if the guy's proud to put it on the table, I sure enjoy looking at it.
Well, I would think that when you go to one of the shows, you get to see a lot of people's models,
Yes.
and you get some ideas probably.
Yes,
from
you
the
get
other
ideas
models.
from that, from magazines. And there are some guys that at the bigger shows, they come from out of state, and some of them are just out of this world. I have a friend that makes hinges he actually makes the hinges out of metal, and he's just a phenomenal builder. He's won a major award out at Salt Lake City, and I love to see what he's going to come up with next. He plumbs them, he wires them, he does everything, and everything is correct.
Yeah.
He just retired. He's a Ford engineer, so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's why I stick. Now this is called a curbside, and why it's called a curbside, there's no engine, and it's just a body underneath, and so it just what you would see sitting at a curb, you know, just. And I think they created that so you don't have to fool with all that technical stuff.
Well, once again, the club meets. It's the Downriver Model Car Club, and if you go on Google and look it up, it'll come up.
Yeah,
and with some info.
With Facebook too.
Oh,
They have
Facebook.
They
Okay.
have a Facebook page.
And then the club meets once a month.
Yep.
Over at the
Third
Andre.
Friday of each month, 7 o'clock at night.
And it's there must be a name for that room. Is it like a?
You know, I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And we're meeting tomorrow night, as a matter of fact. So anybody's welcome. There's no charge to get in.
is there a schedule of the meeting someplace?
No, because everybody knows it's just the third Friday of the month at 7.
Oh, it's the third Friday
Third
of the month.
Friday, third.
Okay, then that's people
Yes,
can always
it's
figure
just,
that out. You know.
Unless something comes up where they have to use the room for another function, then we might move it to the second Friday. But they say that at the club meeting.
Yeah.
But generally, it's it's always the third Friday.
Rick, this has been a lot of fun.
It has
And
been.
I hope we can motivate a couple model builders to come out and
might
join
be,
and look at some of your production.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Join us on KiwaniTalk again soon. Bye now.